This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
A militant attack in Burkina Faso leaves 35 civilians dead. Turkish and Tunisian presidents meet in Tunis to discuss a Libyan ceasefire. And in Nigeria, hundreds of IDPs from Boko Haram insurgency celebrate their best Christmas in 5 years. Hello and welcome to CGTN. I'm Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories in just a moment, but first, Uche Okoronko with the day's business headlines. Uche.
Thank you, Beatrice. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Algerian farmers fight to boost harvest of saffron, the world's most expensive spice. And rising sea levels hit the fishing economy hard in Senegal's Saint Louis. Of course, more on that coming up within the program. For now, back to you, Beatrice.
Uche, thank you. And let's start off in Burkina Faso, where a militant attack has killed 35 civilians, most of them women. The assault took place in the northern Somme province. Authorities say 8 militants and 7 members of the local security force died in the clashes. Burkinabe troops were able to regain control of the military outpost after several hours. The army says they seized a large number of weapons and motorbikes from the militants. President Roch-Marc Kabore has declared 2 days of mourning. Now, 2019 has been a deadly year for Burkina Faso. Hundreds of civilians have been killed this year, despite the security forces receiving military training from the US and France. CGTN's Robert Nagila looks at some of the recent attacks in the country.
The latest attack by jihadi militants targeted the northern town of Abinda, leaving at least 35 civilians dead. President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore said Tuesday subsequent fighting between security forces and militants left 80 militants dead, as well as 7 soldiers. The military says the jihadis assaulted the town after a failed attempt to attack a military detachment in Somme province. On December 1st, at least 14 people were killed after gunmen opened fire inside a church in Burkina Faso. The victims were attending a service at a church in Hontakura in the eastern part of the country. In November, at least 37 civilians working for Canadian gold mining company Semafo were killed and more than 60 wounded after gunmen attacked their convoy. Days later, the military said it had killed 32 terrorists in 2 separate operations in the north of the country. In January 2016, 30 people, half of them foreigners, were killed after jihadis stormed a hotel in the capital, Ouagadougou. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
4 Libyan civilians have been killed after a projectile exploded in a vegetable market on Tuesday. The explosion took place in an eastern suburb of Tripoli. Forces loyal to the UN-backed government blamed the Libyan National Army forces for the attack. The LNA troops led by Khalifa Haftar have been attempting to capture Tripoli. Over 284 civilians have been killed in the fighting. In Tunisia, visiting Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has met with his host President Kais Saied. The 2 leaders say they discussed the possible steps they can take in order to bring a ceasefire in Libya as soon as possible. Erdogan's visit comes amid a storm over Turkey's growing influence in Libya. On November the 27th, Ankara signed a maritime boundary and security cooperation pact with Libya's government of national accord. This has led to other countries carving up the eastern Mediterranean without Turkey's participation. Ankara also signed a military cooperation agreement recently with Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj's government, which creates a possibility of Turkey deploying troops to Libya. The Libyan government is currently battling the Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar's troops for Tripoli.
We discussed the possible steps we can take and opportunities to cooperation with the aim of establishing ceasefire in Libya as soon as possible and returning to a political process. I believe Tunisia will have valuable and constructive contributions to establishing stability in Libya.
Well, let's now cross over to CGTN's Adnan Chauchi. He's on the line from Tunis. Adnan, what has been Tunisia's position on the deal between Turkey and Libya's UN-backed government of national accord?
President Kais Saied said following the meeting with Recep Tayyip Erdogan that the discussions had focused on the situation in Libya in its various aspects. But in any case, the issue of redefining borders and the agreement reached between Turkey and Libya had not been discussed during the meeting, he specified. The Tunisian president added that this issue does not concern Tunisia, neither in its relations with Turkey nor with Libya. Kais Saied indicated that the meeting had offered the opportunity to raise some outstanding issues pending the formation of the new government. The Turkish president, whose short working visit to Tunisia had not been announced to the media, pointed out the challenges facing the Libyan people today, stressing the need for an inter-Libyan dialogue to reach a solution to the crisis. Tunisian President Kais Saied announced yesterday, following a meeting with representatives of Libyan civil society and different political affiliations and political parties, said that Tunisia is against any form of foreign interference in Libya's internal affairs, and that it's against any military operation in Libya, that it backs any peace process, any peace initiative in Libya that will invite all Libyan counterparts to sit to the negotiating table and to discuss the ongoing crisis in a bid to find an urgent, peaceful solution. He insisted on the peaceful solution. Erdogan criticized the many parties that want to impose sanctions on Libya, as he said, and he regretted the absence of Tunisia, Algeria, and Qatar from the Berlin process on Libya. Of course, this is according to Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He said that three countries, which in his view were more familiar with the situation in Libya than others. Recep Tayyip Erdogan assured that his country maintains a permanent contact with Faisal Sarraj's legal government, recalling the memorandum of understanding signed in Turkey between the two countries. He questioned the presence of foreign forces in Libya, making it clear that Turkey would only act if asked to do so, but Tunisia will not interfere in any case and does not support any form of foreign interference or military interference in Libya. This is according to Tunisian President Kais Saied, who's for a peaceful settlement and for dialogue in Libya.
Adnan Chauchi joining us there on the line from Tunis. Let's now head to Nigeria, where hundreds of internally displaced persons from the Boko Haram insurgency are marking what they say is their best Christmas in 5 years. The camp in Abuja has been receiving a lot of food and other gift items sent by donor groups and individuals. It's something the displaced persons in the camp say they have never witnessed before. Here's Deji Badmus with more on that story.
It's not all the time that they gather like this, and whenever they do, it's always for very important reasons. This is the very reason for their gathering here. Food and other supplies brought to the camp by donor groups and individuals as Christmas gifts for the hundreds of displaced persons camped here. There's even a kettle to top it all up. And understandably, the mood in the camp is upbeat.
We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
The IDP say this is the first time in the 5 years that they've been living in this camp that they would be getting this amount of gift items for Christmas. And the items couldn't have come at a better time.
We thank God for the people that they remember us. They bring us some food items. You can see the food items that you bring to us. So today we gather our people, 11 groups, we share it into 11. Everybody are carrying their own and go and share it into group. So we thank Almighty God that we are going to celebrate Christmas with happiness, joyful, dancing and singing.
Last year Christmas, we are not privileged like this. But this year Christmas, I appreciate God because, as you can see, most of our women, everybody is celebrating, happy, charities. I want to give God the glory because He has helped us this year.
The IDPs are all from the northeast of Nigeria, which has been ravaged by Boko Haram, forcing millions of people to flee their homes and communities. With the insurgency still active in their region, they say they are not too sure when they would return home.
We hope that things will be better so that we can go back to our various villages. Because to be staying in this area is not that we wish to, but we are all praying that everything will be okay so that we can go back to our home.
The new year, what we are begging the federal government on is to, as far our place is not yet ready for we to go back, we are begging the federal government to locate us into Nasarawa, where we can have land access to farming, because out of 100% in Northeast, 85% would depend on farming. So I think for the government as well, that you find somewhere part of Nasarawa and locate it where we can get where to farm. I think that's the only problem we have.
While they wait for that to happen or possibly return to their homeland, they say they will simply enjoy this Christmas and pray for more like it. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
Hundreds of protesters descended on shopping malls around Hong Kong on Christmas Day, chanting slogans and forcing one mall to close early. Police briefly fired tear gas to disperse crowds gathered in Mong Kok. The ongoing protests continued from Christmas Eve, with the local government condemning the unrest. You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. A look at the state of Liberia's health sector after the Ebola threat. And Egypt's dining in the dark restaurant wows customers and gives jobs to visually impaired waiters.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
For a look at some economic data out of the country, the country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Liberia was the third country to be hit by the 2014-2015 Ebola outbreak. It had the most reported deaths at more than 4,800. Health workers in particular were severely affected. This was attributed to a fragile health system as well as lack of awareness. 5 years on, authorities say the health systems are much stronger. CGTN Susan Mwongeli reports.
CH Rene Hospital is the largest public hospital in Mosserado in Liberia. The hospital was hardest hit by the Ebola outbreak. Like most hospitals, it was temporarily shut down after several of its prominent health workers died. CH Renee lost over 40 health workers, with 100 plus others infected. Orator was working at the hospital at the time.
We didn't even have GYN gloves. We were just using examination gloves. And our friends kept telling us, look, Ebola is real. Ebola is real. You people have to take time. But then you come to work and pregnant women come, what will you do? You will not send them back. You have to attend to them.
During the height of the outbreak, she attended to a 16-year-old girl that was 28 weeks pregnant. The girl came in bleeding heavily, prompting an emergency delivery. After an unsuccessful attempt to deliver the baby, both mother and child succumbed.
So after I've been 9 days before my son called me to tell me, say, oh, the patient you attended to, they said the patient is positive. In fact, the viral load is high. So I broke down. I felt they were not fair to me because I was giving care. I think it was just simple to tell me, say, look, the patient was positive. I think you need to isolate yourself from your family because we all know what Ebola did at that time. But they left me undone and nobody told me. So I felt bad, I felt terrible.
A World Health Organization report at the time showed that health workers were between 21 and 32 times more likely to be infected with Ebola than people in the general population. Part of the reason was poor training, too few staff members, and shortage or improper use of protective equipment. Fast forward, and there have been some changes. The hospital has expanded to include more bed capacity. But some of the same issues still persist.
The patients come to the hospital without anything. We all know the present situation in our country. There is nothing absolutely in the country. Can you imagine we can even buy, last day we're buying sheets to do to take down patient report or history. Yes, that's how bad it is.
Other challenges include frequent power outages. Emergency services are lacking. Only months ago, in September, health workers took to the streets protesting low wages and poor working conditions. Government says it has no money.
Last year, our total budget to the health system was $77 million. Now, out of the $77 million, almost $45 million went towards salary payment for healthcare workers. And the balance go towards supplies, medications, and you name it, drugs and so forth. If you look at our essential drugs, in order to meet the demand, we need about $22 million a year to meet that demand. And from the balance that is left over, it just cannot. So we depend on donors, we depend on partners. But the partners themselves, as the country improves, their support drops.
But despite the challenges on the curative side of the health system, Liberia has taken steps forward with regard to surveillance and early detection.
And so we understand the gravity of what Ebola is or any infectious disease. As we speak now, we are presently dealing with 3 Lassa outbreaks in the country, and the country is quiet. And until I say to you, you will know. And this is the kind of system we have, because one of the key things about dealing with outbreaks is that if you have the diagnostic capacity, and this is what we didn't have that led to some of the issues. Now we have the capability in country where it doesn't matter what it is, within 12 to 48 to 24 hours, we can tell you which of the disease we are dealing with, and by then, our contact tracers, based on the strong surveillance system that we have, we can make sure that we contain it.
No doubt a major development, but for a country whose health sector is almost non-existent, early detection is just but a drop in a deep ocean. A lack of basic essential services like ambulances, proper equipment, medicine, and a demotivated workforce only means more lives could be lost. Susan Mungeli, CGTN, in Monrovia, Liberia.
Let's now turn to Rwanda. The country has found a smart way to meet the demand for pain medication. CGTN's Ashta Tal has more on how locally produced liquid morphine is helping patients across the country.
This lab in Rwanda is producing a key element in helping hundreds manage crippling pain. Following the 1994 genocide, there were little to no options for pain medication. Under strict government oversight, labs like these are helping fill this vital need. From the lab, the medicine is delivered to patients in need. Today, 56-year-old Madeleine Mukantagara rushes to reach a patient with cervical cancer.
I am taking the medicine now, but I'm still suffering. Now when the dose is increased, maybe it will help me, I don't know.
For Diane, the job is hard but necessary.
The hardest thing about my job is seeing someone who was normal before now approaching the end of their lives step by step.
Countries in the West are dealing with an opioid addiction crisis. U.S. lawmakers pushed the World Health Organization to remove certain guidelines on prescribing opioids. The WHO now plans to revise them. But others have pushed back against the move.
Without pain management, there is no human right. If people are dying in torture of pain, that country, that community is not observing human rights regulations.
In Rwanda, liquid morphine is used to treat chronic life-limiting diseases, but not chronic pain. The distinction looks to avoid the possibility of patients developing an addiction. Ashta Tal, CGTN.
And moving now to Cote d'Ivoire, where the government is boosting support for the social integration program set to ensure maximum inclusion in learning institutions. The program is focused on increasing the numbers of students with special needs in formal institutions of learning. Until now, children with hearing impairment have faced a stigma and challenges accessing support in various academic institutions. Here's CGTN's Beryl Oro with more on that story.
At the National School for the Deaf located in a commune district in Abidjan, more than 200 staff members at the school have adopted the integrated program for both children with special needs and those in the general population.
At first, I just came to see what they were doing in this school. But since I came, I liked what we were learning. That's what convinced me to stay.
As a social worker, I find it particularly interesting to be able to help a person with a disability, and especially when we teach them in the classroom and find that they have understood it very well, then the satisfaction is enormous.
Since its establishment in 1974, the School for the Deaf has inspired the absorption of thousands of people with hearing impairment into formal social and economic spaces in the country.
I passed several tests, but each time I was refused the position to which I claimed because of my handicap. I didn't give up until a private company agreed to hire me. It was after this first job that I was recruited into the public service, and today I am a bursar here at the School for the Deaf in Cote d'Ivoire.
The supervision of children with disabilities is not easy, but our job and our mission is to give these children the chance to have a place in society. We therefore give them the necessary support to facilitate their integration.
The government is on a mission to make schooling a reality for all. And the top priority is to train 157 teachers in 127 institutions in the country.
Our strategy for getting as many children as possible to school is to ensure that we can make the best use of existing structures and ordinary schools that already exist, to ensure that there is maximum inclusion and integration of all the
Since 2010, Cote d'Ivoire has injected consistent financial support, resulting in the training of teachers and increased the number of children in quality care at the school. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Egypt has opened its first dining in the dark restaurant, offering a unique experience for customers as well as employment opportunities for visually impaired waiters. CGTN's Beryl Oro has that report.
A visually impaired advocate and business owner in Egypt took the opportunity of providing a unique experience for diners whilst teaching the visually impaired locals the skills of cooking.
I want to transfer the cases of those with disabilities from civil organizations, from charities that give help for no return, to a new form.
Abdel Basset Azab partnered with an international brand called Dan Le Noir, a dining project that allows patrons to dine in complete darkness, served and guided by visually impaired waiters. An experience focused on enhancing and trusting one's physical senses.
Personally, I cannot see. I would normally need a guide, but I also don't trust them easily because you're essentially operating through their world. But if I guided a customer, he or she will trust me because I'm already like them, in the dark. I know how to handle myself in the dark quite well. The customer should be able to trust me because this is my world. He will be the one who is new to this world, not me.
The project began in November with the aim of finding a way to help the disabled learn how to support themselves.
Just like the Chinese say, teach me how to fish instead of giving me the fish. The same concept is applied here. I want to work this concept into cases of people with disabilities. I want to teach them a profession, to give them work and expand their opportunities.
The element of trust involved in the experience takes the customer into a world only familiar to those suffering from visual impairment.
The mobility, how you move on the dark room, how you need to sit as the people in the dark room, how you need to. It's the same like in ordinary restaurants, but we need to do with mobility. Everything is with mobility because you have a different table, you have a number of chairs by table. So yes, it's like another noise, but it's in the dark.
Dan Le Noir was formed in 2002 in Paris and has branches in London, Barcelona, Madrid, St. Petersburg, Melbourne in Australia, and Marrakesh. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, let's now go over to Uche for a look at the latest business news. Uche.
Thanks, Beatrice. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Algerian farmers fight to boost the harvest of saffron, the world's most expensive spice. And rising sea levels hit the fishing economy hard in Senegal's Saint Louis.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in southwestern China's Chengdu. Li said both countries should work together closely in regards to investment and technological innovation. Li also stressed the importance of cultural exchange. He said China is willing to work towards completing the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is a massive multilateral free trade agreement. Abe said Japan hopes for more progress on free trade talks amongst Japan, China, and South Korea. And in an interview with our sister network, China Central Television, Shinzo Abe shared his view on the Belt and Road Initiative and cooperation between Japan and China in other markets.
There is a huge need for infrastructure development around the world. As for the Belt and Road Initiative proposed by China, all the participating countries at the G20 Osaka summit this year reached an agreement on the principle of quality infrastructure investment. We expect relevant projects to follow this principle and international standards such as openness, transparency, economy, and debt sustainability, so as to bring benefits to more countries. In third-party markets, it's very important for Japan and China to join hands to promote cooperation in accordance with international standards.
Meanwhile, China says it is working with the U.S. to sign a Phase 1 trade deal they reached recently. A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman said the signing of the deal and related arrangements are still being discussed. Now, the deal marked a major step in easing the long-running trade dispute between the two countries. Amongst the key terms are the reduction of some U.S. tariffs on Chinese products, an increase in China's purchases of American farm, energy, and manufactured goods, and initiatives to address American complaints over China's intellectual property practices. And this year saw the trade war between China and the U.S. escalate, with tariffs arising and officials shuttling back and forth between Washington and Beijing. Then, right at the end of this year, the two countries agreed to a Phase 1 deal. While CGTN's Giles Gibson looks back on how trade tensions between the world's two largest economies shaped 2019.
The Phase 1 trade deal arrived just in time for Christmas and received festive greetings from the White House.
I was doing the final touches on the China deal, and that's going to be one of the great deals ever.
As well as from Beijing.
The agreement will help improve the cooperation between China and the US in economy and trade.
US negotiators say China has agreed to buy more American products, particularly agricultural goods, in an effort to reduce the trade deficit between the two nations. In return, the US cut existing tariffs on Chinese goods and cancelled a new round of tariffs set to take effect on the 15th of December.
That would have seemed nearly impossible at the start of the year, which began in stalemate. Then in May, US President Donald Trump hit the escalation button on Twitter.
He announced tariffs on Chinese goods worth $200 billion would increase to 25% and also threatened to impose additional tariffs. That meant missed opportunities for some parts of the US economy.
The agricultural sector has been particularly damaged in this engagement of a trade war with China. There had been opportunities for the United States to really sell pork, for instance, to China because there was this big outbreak of African swine flu in China. And yet, because of this trade war, it was very difficult for U.S. exporters to actually take advantage of that and export to the Chinese market.
Then in June, on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Japan, President Trump and China's leader Xi Jinping agreed to come back to the negotiating table. On-again, off-again trade talks eventually led to the Phase 1 deal, and some US trade experts believe President Trump got exactly what he wanted.
The deal has to do with November 2020. In the sense that, and I think this is not just with the China deal, it's with their pressure for the US-Canada-Mexico deal. It's the decision that the president has made, apparently, though he keeps hedging on it, not to introduce bogus national security automobile tariffs. So he has a track record that he thinks he can run on.
So a topsy-turvy 2019 led to a Phase 1 deal, but some of the most contentious issues in the trade relationship, like state subsidies for Chinese companies, are still on the table as we head into 2020. Giles Gibson, CGTN, Washington.
Well, let's head to Algeria now, where a growing number of farmers have chosen to cultivate the luxury spice called saffron. It is the most expensive spice in the world, demanding a delicate care to ensure the farmer can earn a strong harvest for ready markets. Now, in the past 2 years, farmers, especially in the desert regions of the country, have adopted specific steps to expand Algeria's market share in saffron sales.
Among the reefs of this desert land in Gagdai province, residents are preparing the land for saffron cultivation. And the hot sun makes the already hard process tougher.
The process of bringing saffron crocus bulbs to this arid desert is a long story with a lot of challenges. I cooperated at first with an Algerian institute in obtaining it, but I alone faced the challenges of nature and the risk of investing in desert agriculture.
This is a model that is used by hundreds of Algerian farmers who are focused on planting the precious spice.
My primary goal is to succeed in growing and expanding saffron and into other crops. But the first problem here is water due to administrative bureaucracy and the high cost of bringing water here. As you see, I am growing saffron now and I don't know whether I will get water or not.
Salaheddin and 200 farmers in the area have set up a local association to short-circuit the challenges of farming this luxury spice.
The saffron plant succeeds a lot in this region due to the abundance of sunlight. I think that the saffron will have a promising future here in the Algerian desert.
Cultivation of saffron is a profitable and inexpensive agricultural activity that generates important income in hard currency.
As you can see, after days and weeks of watering and care today, we pick saffron flowers. European laboratories to which we sent our product confirmed its high quality. However, I also want to sell it in the local market as a first stage, and I am not thinking about exporting for now.
The wholesale price of saffron ranges from around $1,000 to $5,000 per kilogram, while the kilogram of seeds is sold in Algeria for between $50 to $100, and this has encouraged other farmers in the region to join in cultivation of the nation's red gold. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Now in Senegal, fishermen in St. Louis are struggling to catch fish. The fishing sector there is the main employer in the former French colonial capital. Here's CGTN's Asta Tal with more.
Every day, at least 250 pirogues head to sea. Pirogues are locally handcrafted boats. They have been used for decades, but something has changed for fishermen in Senegal's Saint-Louis. They're coming back to shore with less fish in tow.
At the moment, there are less fish in the surrounding area, so we have to go further and further out in the open sea to make a good catch.
In Saint-Louis, the Senegal River spills out to the Atlantic Ocean. Less fish forces fishermen to go further into the Atlantic, a dangerous route.
We suffer a great deal because to date 415 fishermen have died in this perilous crossing. In this region, fishing is the sector that employs the most. We often see our fishermen go out to sea in the evening and never see them come back.
Rising sea levels caused by climate change is among the causes of the current woes. Authorities are reviewing the safety of pirogues and asking fishermen to wear life jackets. Astatal, CGTN.
Now, the recent 20th anniversary of Macau's return to its motherland, China, continues to attract wide attention, including from South Africa. Dr. Emmanuel Matambo, who is a research fellow at the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg, has supported this. In an interview, Dr. Matambo said Macau has experienced economic growth since it returned to China, and this, of course, has improved life expectancy.
Since Macau was returned to China from Portugal in 1999, its development has been very remarkable. The figures today actually show that when it comes to purchasing power parity, it is the second best. It has the second best per capita income in the whole world, just behind Qatar. So that is very remarkable for such a small region. And then I think its achievement is mostly to do with its fidelity towards this one country, two systems framework.
And Dr. Emmanuel Matambo also said Macau and Hong Kong are the territory of China and that the affairs of the two territories are China's internal affairs. Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, we'll be looking at South Africa's draft regulation on the oil and gas sector. Of course, all of that coming up top of the hour. For now, back to you, Beatrice.
Uche, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. Nigeria's largest seafood festival takes place in the country's commercial capital, Lagos.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
Nigeria's largest seafood festival has taken place in the country's commercial capital, Lagos. The 2019 edition event, organized by the state government, seeks to project its aquaculture and seafood diversity. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam brings us the story.
Fresh, processed or packaged, a variety of seafood on display at the Lagos Seafood Festival. The annual event showcases the aquaculture potentials of Nigeria's commercial capital to the world. Government, farmers, traders and investors converge to explore business prospects and investment opportunities in the sector.
And Lagos is a state of aquatic splendor. 22% of the land in Lagos is water. We have millions of people in the fisheries value chains in Lagos, from the producers to the people that are in the artisanal fisheries. We believe that this will be a very good opportunity for them to scale up their profitability, the profitability of their business, the productivity of their enterprises.
This is part of government's effort at economic diversification, agriculture being a key area, with a vast network of lagoons, creeks and rivers, which pitch fishing as the predominant occupation for locals here. The government is partnering with farmers to reposition agriculture for exports.
We thank Lagos State government. They empower us. They give us outboard engine, nets, and boats, so to relieve our problem in the river and the sea. So we are going up and down. Anywhere we want to go to fish, go there successfully.
Seeing is believing. They now see that we have a lot of potential for export, and export is the in thing now, and we need to really do good things, process our fish properly so that we can be accepted out there.
Agriculture has remained a viable sector for President Buhari's economic diversification agenda. The state currently produces about 155,000 tons of fish, but consumption stands at over 300,000 tons. It hopes to scale up production by promoting its aquatic potentials to both local and international markets and stimulate growth of tourism and entertainment through the annual festival. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
And in the spirit of Christmas, a group of volunteers in Johannesburg, mostly students, extended their hand to prepare a festive lunch for over 200 homeless people, catering to the city's poor and destitute. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
This year, these students are hoping to bring a little Christmas joy and restore some dignity to those who need it most.
In my culture, food brings people together. So a good, decent meal will make them feel loved, warm, that warmth that you get when you're at home with your family, with your parents. So we're trying to just give them that warmth of having a family, to say there's other people that care about them.
I think for me it's a very personal thing, because growing up in farms, that's where I stayed, I was exposed to disadvantaged people, knowing that what it is to have and not have. And now that I have an ability to help, it means a lot to be able to make a difference in somebody's life with what I have. Today we're having beef, chicken, and rice, and lots of veggies, beetroots, carrots, potato salad. So we want it to be like a Christmas full meal that will be not like an ordinary meal that I have on a daily basis. So that is why we want to make it special and going all out.
The experience of having a full meal, like some of them haven't had a full meal in quite a long time. So like it is going to be a huge deal for them. So we want them to have that sense of belonging, even to have that experience of enjoying Christmas and stuff.
Teboho has lived on the streets for over 10 years. After dropping out of high school, he made his way to the streets of Johannesburg searching for work. Instead, he found a life of drugs and hardship.
Christmas, for me, living on the street is just another day, I would say, because, well, you see by the movement that it's Christmas, but with your life, your personal life, it doesn't make any difference because every day is the same. I feel special right now that I'm talking to you guys, you know, because when you're on the streets, you are treated as a dog or just an animal, you know.
It's estimated Johannesburg has over 7,500 homeless people.
Christmas seems to bring out the best in us. The spirit is all about bringing peace and joy to the world. But all this goodness around a date has its downside. Christmas doesn't come every day for Johannesburg's less fortunate. After this meal, the prospect of returning back out on the streets is a reality for many here, without knowing when their next meal will be. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. The Proteas gear up for a Boxing Day test against England at Centurion.